What's going on, guys, and welcome back to Hashtag AskGSM, episode 288 here today for Wednesday, June 5th, 2019. I am Graham GSM Matthews. Hope you guys are doing well. Coming off 3 wild wrestling-filled weekends between Money in the Bank 2 weeks ago, Double or Nothing last weekend, and then TakeOver this past weekend. Or rather, I think Double or Nothing was technically 2 weeks ago. Money in the Bank was technically 3 weeks ago. But you get my gist here. And I was in attendance for all 3. Probably one of the very few, if not the only person. I'm sure there was more than just me. But definitely only a handful of people who have been at all 3 events. And all 3 shows were great. I would argue that they got better than the last one. Money in the Bank was a very fun show, despite people's problems and criticisms of the finish of the main event, and rightfully so. But it was a good show overall. Double or Nothing was even better. Very good show overall. And then TakeOver was pure excellence. Really loved TakeOver on Saturday. So, of course, here today we're answering your questions from Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. If you want to send in a question to the show, you can do so by tweeting me on the Twitter machine at WrestleRant with the hashtag AskGSM. Find me on Facebook at facebook.com/Graham.gsm.Matthews. Leave a question on the post I usually put up on Tuesday nights, if not on the wall itself. And last but certainly not least, drop your question down below in the comment section of this very video. I'll include it in next week's edition. And shout out to all you guys for sending your questions early. I did put up on Twitter around Tuesday afternoon, just yesterday afternoon, that I would be recording the video right after SmackDown. Now, of course, that didn't happen. I had to work on an article for Bleacher Report right after SmackDown ended. I was up until like fucking 2 o'clock in the morning working on it. So I did not end up recording after the show, but I might do that in the future, depending on what my Wednesday schedule looks like, depending on the week. So thank you guys for accommodating me with that. I really do appreciate it. And just send in your questions early. I'm doing it right after SmackDown's fine too. That's usually what most people do. Earlier the better though, because the earlier I get them in the document, like Wednesday morning, Tuesday night, the earlier I can record the video, and the earlier it goes out on the YouTube channel for your listening pleasure. So let's get started here first with Lane of the Y from YouTube. Their question was, the as good or even greater than WrestleMania tagline just makes me want to watch Super Showdown in Jeddah, country unspecified, even less. WrestleMania low-key makes itself a chore to sometimes watch because of how long every WWE pay-per-view is and how long especially WrestleMania becomes. Why would I want to see another especially long show where the biggest storyline development promises to be Brock Lesnar wins the Universal Championship again, depending on whether or not he still prefers his Money in the Bank boombox as an accessory? I totally agree. I mean, the WrestleMania tagline itself is just dumb. The show on paper alone does nothing for me. I'm sorry, but I know I do not feel alone. I'm not alone in feeling that way. This show on paper looks like a fucking disaster, especially coming off that abomination that was Crown Jewel back in November. Why would I have high hopes for this show after they botched the hell out of that Crown Jewel show, which the hype sucked anyway. No one was looking forward to it. People had low expectations, and somehow they managed to shoot below my low expectations and deliver one of the worst shows, if not the worst show I've ever seen in WWE. So I don't think this will be much better, probably marginally better, but it could very well go either way. Goldberg and Taker does nothing for me. The whole Brock Lesnar, will he cash in? Even though he had his chance on Monday after beating the shit out of Seth Rollins. It's not like Rollins was in the ring, which I guess this was kind of the case at one point. It's not like Rollins was in the ring ready for Lesnar to cash in. And then Lesnar came down to the ring and then was like, fuck this, I'll wait till Friday. That would have made some sense, even though it was obviously a bait and switch. With Lesnar promising to cash in and then he didn't. But at least that would have made sense. It's a typical heel tactic and then would have built at least some, maybe not a lot, of intrigue for Friday's show. Instead, they had Brock Lesnar beat the holy shit out of Seth Rollins. He had him right there. He could have just pinned him after hitting him with like multiple chair shots and beating the holy hell out of Seth Rollins. He had the championship won right then and there. Now, I'm not complaining just because I'm glad Lesnar is not champion as of this recording. But I just thought that was stupid. It makes very little sense to have Brock Lesnar come so close to winning the championship and then not win the championship. I just thought that was stupid. But yeah, that really does nothing for me going into the pay-per-view. Corbin and Rollins alone, Kofi and Dolph again, Randy Orton, Triple H again, Like I said, the whole WrestleMania tagline, like you said, that's more realistic. People are simply not a fan of the tagline because nothing will ever be WrestleMania. Maybe production-wise, this will feel like a WrestleMania level show because they put far more money into these Saudi Arabia shows than they actually do any other pay-per-view any other month out of the year. But to give it as much time as WrestleMania, which I don't think it will be, WrestleMania is a 5-hour show with a 2-hour kickoff. I don't think we're getting that. As far as I understand, it is a 1-hour kickoff with a 4-hour runtime for the actual pay-per-view, which is no different than any other pay-per-view that we have. It should be shorter, but whatever. It's not WrestleMania. They're doing themselves a disservice by promoting it as such because it's not WrestleMania. WrestleMania this year, I would argue, was a very good show, if not a great show. Super Showdown will not be that. It doesn't have the grandeur, the build-up, the hype, the excitement. No one gives a shit. This show will be a disaster, and promoting it to be bigger than it actually is, they're just digging their own grave with that tagline there. At the Average Grunt from Twitter, he's got a couple different tweets here. I compiled all into one question, but it was very interesting. So his question was, or questions rather, I have some ideas for a few different match types I'd like to get your thoughts on. The first one is called a Double or Nothing match, which there's no affiliation with AEW here, by the way. He says, it's used as a blow-off to a feud that sees the challenger face the champion one last time, but here's the catch. Not only would this be their very last shot at winning the title, but in this match, they would have to beat the champion not once, but twice, with the champion only having to beat them once to retain the title. No disqualifications, no countouts. On the flip side, by accepting this match, the champion forfeits their right to a rematch if the challenger wins. It's kind of a twist on a 2 out of 3 falls match. I think this would work well with a heel champ and a face challenger, and maybe a feud out of respect, a la Zayn and Neville from NXT many years ago. The other match is much simpler, an ultimate tables match. Pinfalls only, but before you can pin your opponent, you have to put them through a table. I think at the very least, it would be more entertaining to watch than a standard one-on-one tables match, which I usually find boring. Make it a tag team match or a multi-man match, and there would be so much chaotic fun. So what do you think? Would you think that either one of these matches, or what do you think, or would you want to see, rather, any of these match types? The first one, yes. The second one, no. The Ultimate Tables match, I see what you're going for there. It doesn't really do anything for me personally. I agree, I'm not a big tables match fan. I just don't find them exciting. It's better than a fucking chairs match, which I'm glad we've not seen in several years. That match was a total disaster. The tables match, oh, will he go through the table? Oh, here's a fake out. Oh, like, there is some suspense regarding the near falls, I guess you can call them, or the near spots where they almost fall through the table. But, I don't know, I feel like that's been done to death. That's not really my match. That's not really my kind of match type, personally. Making it an ultimate tables match, where you have to pin them after putting them through the table, does it really make much of a difference? Because it has the same effect as putting them through a table. When you put someone through a table, you win the match. After you put someone through a table, you would probably win, right? Like, I would assume that, I would assume that after you put someone through a table, that should be it anyway. That should be the end of the match. It's not like they're kicking out of that. So, what's the big difference between putting someone through a table and then putting someone through a table and then just pinning them? I don't really see much of a difference there personally, but I do like the match type that you mentioned the first time. The first one, the Double or Nothing match. It is a bit convoluted, yes. Probably, especially in WWE, where they get way too cute with their own rules for their own good. I don't know if it would work in WWE, because again, they kind of tend to make things more complicated than they need to be. But I do think it's a great idea for feuds, especially like you said, with a heel champ and a face challenger for a heated, ruthless rivalry. I think it works, and I like it a lot. Again, I don't know if WWE would be the right place to do that. Maybe NXT. Ring of Honor, I could actually see that work there. They have a lot of different match types like that where... So, for example, they just had a show on Sunday. I didn't watch it, but I think it's not free-for-all. It's something like that. They had a pay-per-view on Sunday, and they had like a Fatal 4-Way match where if any one of the challengers wins, then they get a future Ring of Honor World title shot. But if the Ring of Honor World Champion wins, who is currently Matt Taven, if he pins, whoever he pins cannot challenge for the championship for up to 1 year. And Taven pinned Gordon to win the match, so Flip Gordon can no longer challenge for the Ring of Honor World title for the next year. I don't know if it's as long as Taven is champion or what the deal is. I think it's just in general, if I'm not mistaken. But I thought that was pretty cool. That's a unique match type. It's a unique stipulation that makes sense, easy to follow. This sounds like it would be easy to follow. There's a lot of rules, technically. But still, I think it'd be a cool match type. It could work with the right story being told. And yeah, I'm a fan of it, so I like your creativity here. The Ultimate Tables thing, maybe someone else would like it more than I do. I'm not personally a fan, but the first one I do like a lot, if done right. At Jeremy8911 from Twitter, his first question was, do you think WWE should do a best out of 7 series with Ricochet and Cesaro, leading to either one of them getting a U.S. title shot or a Universal title shot or forming a tag team? Best of 7 series with Ricochet and Cesaro, hey, I'm all for it. The only issue with that is that we've already seen 3 matches between the two. So to do another 7 would make 10 matches in total. It gets to a point where it's almost 1 too many. Probably 3 or 4 too many. The matches are very good. I thought Monday's was the weakest of the bunch, but it was still very good. But yeah, it's not like you can say, oh, those 3 matches were match 1, 2, and 3. Like, it has to be, I believe, anyway, determined from the get-go that it was a best of 7 series. It was never said at any point that this is a best of 3, 5, or 7 series. So, yeah, it would be a great idea, but at this point, we've already seen multiple matches between them, so a best of 7 might be a little too much. Then again, though, they did the exact same thing with Cesaro and Sheamus, like in 2016, where they already had 3 matches on Raw before it was determined that they would be fighting in a best of 7 series over the next month or two. So, they had like 9 or 10 matches in total, which was definitely too many, but they were always good, so I never really complained, especially if there's something on the line. A future U.S. title shot, Universal title shot. So at this point, best of 7 may be too many, unless they say they like retcon it and are like, oh, like those other 3 matches counted towards the series, which would be dumb, but whatever. If something is on the line, then I'm all for it, because you can't really be fighting for nothing. It's like, who cares at that point? U.S. title shot would be perfect. Universal title shot would even be better. I don't see Cesaro, though, going for the Universal Championship, and I also don't see Ricochet going for that championship anytime soon either. The forming a tag team thing, no thanks. Absolutely no thanks. I know they would have great chemistry, don't get me wrong, but that sounds like an exact fucking repeat of what we saw 3 years ago with one of the same guys in Cesaro and then Sheamus, which led to The Bar, which was a great tag team, don't get me wrong, but we had them for like 3 years. Cesaro should be his own guy. If he's going to form a tag team with anyone, it should be Cassius Ohno reforming the Kings of Wrestling from Ring of Honor. If it's not that, then I have no interest in another Cesaro tag team, or even Ricochet in a tag team. We already saw Ricochet team with Aleister Black again. They were great together, but both of these guys deserve to shine on their own. Jeremy's second question, could you see Tyler Breeze and Velveteen Dream teaming up if we get another Dusty Classic? What other stars not being used on the main roster would you like to see in NXT or NXT UK? So to answer the first part of your question with Tyler Breeze and Velveteen Dream, yeah, I guess that would be cool if they teamed up in the next Dusty Classic, but that won't be for a while. We just had the Dusty Classic no less than 3 months ago. So it's still fresh in our minds. I don't know if I would do another one anytime soon. Probably in early 2020 is when I would bring it back. By that point, who knows if Breeze will still be in NXT. Who knows if Velveteen Dream will still be in NXT by that point. By that point, Velveteen Dream would be in NXT for 3 years by 2020. So, I mean, it would be a good idea if they were still in NXT. I mean, yeah, they'd make for a great tag team after what we saw on Saturday. They have good chemistry as opponents. They made up afterwards. So, yeah, but it's not something I'm, like, dying to see. The second part of your question, what other stars not being used on the main roster would I like to see in NXT or NXT UK? There's a lot of people. I mean, Luke Harper, we've talked about it before. I think Jeremy's actually brought it up before. Why the hell not? I would assume they won't, just because that would probably be giving him what he wants. So he requested his release. They denied it. At this point, I don't see them pushing him or doing anything of real note with him. Though it would be cool to see him back in NXT for the rest of his run in WWE. It's not like they have any plans to do anything with him of note on his own on SmackDown, so I don't see why not. Luke Harper in NXT on his own would be cool. Chad Gable, Jeremy, you've brought this up many times. Why the fuck not? Put him on 205 Live, NXT, NXT UK, for God's sakes. Do something with the guy. Do something. He's way too good to be wasted. And so far, he's been utterly wasted on the main roster. In the tag team, on his own, whatever, the guy's been fucking wasted. Yeah, he's a former tag team champion in NXT, on Raw, on SmackDown, but he should really be doing more than he is right now, which is nothing. So Chad Gable in NXT would be great, following in the footsteps of Tyler Breeze. Killian Dane, I think, is already back in NXT. If I'm not mistaken, I think he recently... we already talked about this on a previous episode. I'm just waiting to see him resurface on the actual show. Leo Rush, I know there was talk at one point of putting him back on 205 Live on NXT. I mean, I like him as Bobby Lashley's manager, but if they don't have any plans to do that right now, because we have not seen him on Raw in like close to 2 months, and he has heat on him right now, and they want to give him a demotion. Yeah, maybe pay-wise from the main roster to the NXT level, to the developmental level, but I think he would see that as a plus. NXT, I mean, the last time he was there, he maybe had all of 1 or 2 matches, because the roster was so stockpiled with talent, and it still is to this day. It still is even now. So I'm not even saying that Leo Rush would be, thriving in NXT if he was brought back there. He'd still probably be overshadowed, but it's better than not doing anything with him, like they are on the main roster. And then other main roster members, EC3, why did they even bother to call him up when they did? When they had no fucking plans for him, and he's done nothing but flounder in his 6 months on the main roster. What a fucking waste. So EC3 back in NXT, where he has unfinished business anyway. He never won any championships. Didn't win many big matches. I don't think he ever won out a TakeOver. He had maybe 2 TakeOver matches, lost them both. So I would put EC3 back in NXT. And then, I hate to say this, because I do want to see them thrive on the main roster. They deserve to be on the main roster, on Raw, on SmackDown. But I think Cedric Alexander has had 1 Raw match, and he lost. And we haven't seen him since. Oh, he's chasing the 24/7 title. Who gives a fuck? The guy should be doing a lot more than he is. Than winning the main event championship, as he says on Twitter. So, Cedric in NXT would be cool. Buddy Murphy. I hate to say this because the guy belongs on the main roster. They had him cut 1 promo when it was announced he was moving to SmackDown 2 months ago. We have not seen him since. Not a single match on WWE TV. So, I don't know what the fuck they're doing with that guy. But at least in NXT, he'd be doing more than he is right now. He had that awesome match with Velveteen Dream right before he got called up to SmackDown 2 months ago, right after WrestleMania. Amazing match. I would love to see more from that, more of that from Murphy in NXT. His next question: do you agree that they shouldn't have had the Viking Raiders vacate the NXT Tag Team titles and instead had them in the ladder match at TakeOver 25 and drop them there? Yeah, honestly, I don't see why not. I was thinking the same thing. What was the point of taking the championships off of them or having them vacate it if it was going to be a ladder match? So they would have been protected anyway. Yeah, I mean, obviously, it would have been obvious that they were dropping the championship, but who gives a shit? That's like 4 years ago when Sasha Banks arrived on the main roster. She brought with her the NXT Women's Championship. I don't think she ever brought the belt to the actual show, to Raw, to SmackDown, but she still technically was the NXT Women's Champion. Did they have her vacate the championship? No. They had her go back down to NXT and had her drop it the right way by losing to Bayley because that was the right story to tell. They could have very easily done... I mean, technically they did the exact same thing with Paige when she got called up. And Asuka was the exception because she was undefeated, so it really didn't matter. Paige, I'm not mad that they did it with her either, just because when she debuted, she won the Divas title. So having her go back down to NXT to get pinned for a title would have been the wrong move, because she was the Divas champion, so it would have made that title look weak. Not like it meant anything anyway, but that's my logic. If she wasn't the Divas champion, yeah, it would have been right for her to go back down to NXT and lose the championship to Charlotte or Natalya or someone else before going to the main roster full time. The Viking Raiders, they would not have had to be pinned here. Yeah, they should be kept undefeated. I think that's great. They have not been on Raw in weeks, so why the fuck not? Have them on the match. Have them in the match. Whether, I don't know if a fatal 5-way match would have been practical. A fatal 5-way tag team ladder match. I don't think I've ever seen that before. That might have been one too many teams. But take out, and I love Lorcan and Burch, but did they really need to be in that match? Have they done anything to deserve a shot? At least the Forgotten Sons, who I loathe, have at least won more matches than they've lost in the last number of months. So them being in the match makes sense. The Street Profits, who took the fight to the Viking Raiders multiple times before the Viking Raiders got called up, it made sense for them to be in the match. And then who was the other team? Oney Lorcan, Danny Burch, Forgotten Sons, Street Profits. Was it? Oh, the Undisputed Era. I mean, that they never really got the rematch after they lost the belts back in January in Phoenix. So I would have taken out Burch and Lorcan, and then put in the Viking Raiders. It didn't really make that much of a difference. And yeah, it would have made the match, predictable. But it wasn't predictable that the Street Profits were going to win. It was logical, but not predictable. A lot of people thought Undisputed Era would win. There was a chance the Forgotten Sons could win. So having the Viking Raiders in that match to drop the belts the right way would not have been that big of a deal. I would have loved to have seen that. It would have made the match better, maybe. I mean, Lorcan and Burch are great, but the Viking Raiders are arguably just as good, if not better. So, yeah, I would have done that, but that's their way of doing things. Maybe that was a Vince call. Maybe Vince didn't want them wrestling in NXT anymore, and he didn't want them pinned for whatever reason. Why would it matter anyway? Because they're not even on the fucking show these days, so who cares? But, yeah, I agree with you. I think they should have done that, too. His next question, it was a tweet included with a picture. It said, could you see this happening? And it was a picture of Alexa Bliss and Nikki Cross as the WWE Women's Tag Team Champions. Yeah, I could see that happening. I don't see why not. I mean, at this point, Alexa Bliss is going for the SmackDown Women's Championship. Why? I have no fucking clue. The brand split is dead and buried by this point. I don't even really know what to say. But, yeah, I could see that happening. Maybe not right now with Bliss being busy on the SmackDown side of things. Nikki Cross, she and Becky beat the Tag Team Champions last week. So I don't know why that wasn't followed up on at all. Cross then beat Peyton Royce. So I guess Bliss and Cross would be getting a tag team title shot. I'm not exactly sure. But yeah, I could see that happening. I guess it would be better than whatever the hell we have right now in the Iconics, who aren't doing anything with those championships. They've been buried 6 feet under. I think I can probably name one match they've won on TV since they won those belts. And that was against those two jobbers on the SmackDown after WrestleMania. That was it. I don't think I've seen them win a match in the last 2 months, and that is so incredibly sad. But yeah, I think Bliss and Cross, hey, it cannot be any worse than what we have right now in the Iconics as tag team champions. And plus, it would give Nikki Cross a championship, so again, no complaints. At Reborn Again, John Ritland from the Twitter and YouTube machines. Check out his YouTube show, Real Honestly with John Ritland, for some great content. His first question was, is it just me, or did Undertaker seem incredibly confused during his promo to close Raw? I think a better question would be, when does Undertaker not look confused whenever he's on WWE TV? At this point, I was thinking this after Raw this week, when was the really last memorable promo that Undertaker cut on Raw or SmackDown? Maybe during the Shawn Michaels, like not 10 years ago, but maybe 10 years ago. I'm talking about a couple of months ago, like late last year, during like the fall season, leading up to Super Showdown, the other Super Showdown, when Taker was like, oh, you could never beat me, blah, blah, blah. That was really good. Beyond that, though, has he ever really cut a great promo on his own in like recent years? Every fucking time they trot this guy out there, he cuts a meaningless 5-minute, not even 5-minute, like a 2-minute promo saying, oh, rest in peace, blah, blah, blah. And people shit on Bray Wyatt for never really making any sense in his promos, which they should because they don't make sense. Undertaker's no different. Listen to Undertaker's promos. Does anything he says make the slightest bit of sense? And it's a lose-lose. Because if the writing team is still crafting his promos for him, which I don't believe they are, because the guy's a legend, I feel like he cuts his own promos, then that's an issue. But if Taker's cutting his own promos and writing his own, lines and shit, they're bad. They're not good. I'm I'm not saying he has to come out there as Mark Calloway and talk to us as a normal human being, but these promos don't mean anything. They don't mean jack shit. It doesn't make me any more excited for the match than I was before. I thought what they did on SmackDown was way better than what they did on Raw. Goldberg's promo was short, sweet, straight to the point. I understood what he meant. I was into it. I was hooked. Taker shows up real quick. After the lights go out, they go face to face. Lights go off, and he's gone. Short, sweet, simple, straight to the point. I liked it. What they did on Raw was a failure. They had 2 minutes for him to talk before the show went off the air. And then after the show went off the air, all he said was, Goldberg, at Super Showdown, you will rest in peace. And then like a 2-minute video on their YouTube channel of Taker making his exit from the arena. So, again, I was not a fan of the promo. I'm not saying I'm shitting on The Undertaker. Hey, I was the first one to pop big when he came back at the Raw that I was at right after WrestleMania this year. I thought it was awesome. But at this point, bring the guy back with a purpose. Give him something that he can really sink his teeth into. I mean, I'm sure he doesn't give a shit. As long as he's getting a paycheck, he's getting paid millions of dollars to wrestle one match that's really probably not going to be all that good. I'm sure he doesn't care. I mean, hey, if I was in that position, I wouldn't care either. Who could blame the guy? At the same time, though, it's like, these feuds, my God, they're just bad. The Goldberg feud was nearly non-existent. The Triple H one, the promos I thought were good. The matches sucked. Before that, God, the Rusev match at last year's Saudi Arabia show had zero build. Has he even wrestled other than that? I can't even really remember, to be honest. The John Cena match the guy was never even on TV for that build. So again, just less is more with The Undertaker. It's not like, Taker appearing on Raw is a big draw now. It's not. It's not. That well ran dry years ago. It's not a draw anymore. Yeah, it's more special when he shows up on occasion, but at the same time, it's like whenever he does show up, he never has anything of note to say. It's the same thing. It's rinse and repeat with his promos. Just replace Goldberg with Triple H, and you have the same promo he cut before Super Showdown at SmackDown 1000 last year. Same exact fucking promo. Oh, rest in peace, rest in peace. Who cares? Who cares? So yeah, I was not a fan of that promo on Raw this week. Is the NXT Women's Division at a new low point after Io Shirai versus Shayna Baszler. It just seems like the division has been at an almost standstill for the last year plus. Now, I know you, John, are not a big Shayna Baszler fan, and I'm not going to blame you. I mean, your opinion is your opinion. I like Shayna Baszler. I think she's been a good champion. I think she should have lost the championship over WrestleMania weekend, if not sooner than that, to Io Shirai, Bianca Belair, whoever, and then to Io Shirai on this show at TakeOver 25 on Saturday. She didn't. So here's what I like about it. Here's what I don't really have an issue with. I think she has good matches. Her match was arguably the weakest on the show on Saturday. That's not to say it was a bad match. I thought it was a very good, if not a great match. She's had some really good matches. The Bianca Belair match was very good. The 4-way in New York was great. I love the series of matches that she and Kairi Sane had. They have awesome chemistry. Really like those matches they had. I think she plays her role really well. She's come a long way since she debuted over a year and a half ago. I'm a Shayna Baszler fan. She's not my favorite women's wrestler of all time. I would rather have other women in that role. I would love to see Mia Yim be the person to take that title from her. I would love to see Candice LeRae be the person to take that title from her. I know that's probably not going to happen, and it will likely be Io Shirai, and that's fine too, because Io Shirai is great. But the division is not thriving. I do agree. It is, I would argue, honestly, and this is just me, I would argue the division is better now than it was when Asuka was champion. Because I feel like you can't complain about Shayna being champion. It's like, no one is really benefiting from her reign. She's not burying anyone. That's such a fucking dumb word. I said it earlier with like the Iconics. That is burying. The fact that they have not won in 2 months. And they're the tag team champions, God forbid. Baszler is not burying anyone. She's not damaging the division. I'm not a big fan of all the interference from Marina Shafir and Jessamine Duke. I'm not a fan of that. I feel like it's way too overused, and I'm honestly surprised NXT keeps doing that because they're not really all that known for interference. It's going to be a big deal when she loses it, regardless of whether it's Io Shirai, Mia Yim, Candice LeRae, fucking Aaliyah. It doesn't matter who she drops the belt to. It's going to be a big deal. But I feel like, again, you can't complain about Baszler as champion if Asuka did the exact same thing. When Asuka was champion, what stars did we really have in that division? At least right now, we have a feud outside of the title picture. We had, or still do have, I think tonight they're facing off. I know that for a fact they're facing off tonight because I saw the match before TakeOver on Saturday. Bianca Belair and Mia Yim. That's a great feud of one-upsmanship, one-up-womanship, whatever the fuck you want to call it, with which woman is better. Both women trying to solidify their superiority over the other. So I like that feud. I like both women. Bianca Belair's a star. Mia Yim is a star in the making. I really like Candice. They have Casey Catanzaro, and then waiting in the wings. They're not really doing anything with Deonna Purrazzo, but she's there. They have Chelsea Green. They have a lot of talent in that division. So it's not like it's all about Baszler or nobody else. Because Io Shirai is still a star. It's not like Mia Yim has been damaged any. Candice LeRae is still on her way up. They're using her better now than they ever have at any other point in her NXT career because she was doing nothing in 2018. Which I was fine with at first with the whole Johnny Gargano thing, but then she was never really on TV on her own unless it was something involving Johnny Gargano. But she's doing better now. They have Aaliyah there, Vanessa Bourne. I'm not really big fans of them, but they're progressing. They're getting better. When Asuka was champion, we had Asuka as champion. The Iconics were not stars. They were fucking glorified punching bags for Asuka. They never really won. They were losers. There was Ember Moon, but she too lost to Asuka multiple times. So, I mean, she was a star, but not the star that Asuka was, which I don't think anyone was, really. But they had Ember Moon, the Iconics, Asuka. That's really about it. Nikki Cross, she was around. She was probably the closest thing to a threat to Asuka's championship reign in the summer of 2017. But even she, after she lost her title matches to Asuka, and she did lose a lot to Asuka, she didn't really do much. She kind of floundered for the rest of her time in NXT. At least now they have a lot of different women who are still doing well, getting matches on the show. It's not all about Shayna. And Shayna is definitely more vulnerable than Asuka was. Asuka, again, great talent, amazing talent, great reign as champion, over a year and a half as champion, had a lot of good takeover matches, but the division definitely was damaged with Asuka as champion because it was all about Asuka and then nobody else. And then as soon as Asuka left, the division was dead because there was really no one to care about, pay attention to, because Asuka had beat everybody. She had beat Nikki Cross. She beat Ember Moon. She beat Peyton Royce. She beat Billie Kay. She beat that person. So at that point, why would I care about the rest of the division when Asuka's already proven to have buried and dominated every single one of them? Maybe not buried, but you know what I'm saying. I hate using that word. I don't know why it slipped out there. But at least now it's Shayna, with Shayna being champion. There's other women getting a chance outside of Shayna, outside of the title picture. There's Bianca, there's Maya, there's Candice, so, and they still have more women waiting in the wings to be called up to TV, including Chelsea Green, who I think is very good. Deonna Purrazzo, they could be doing a lot more with. She's another great talent. I feel like there's another woman I'm not thinking of. I know they have Casey, who's just getting her feet wet right now on NXT TV. She's been kind of shown, but not really. She's had a few appearances. She's really, really good. So, I don't think the division is at a new low point. It really was, honestly, when Asuka was champion and soon after, and it took a while for them to rebuild that division with people like Shayna Baszler, people like Kairi Sane, people like Candice, and Bianca Belair, and several others. It took a while for the division to get back to where it should have been. It'll never be what it used to be with Charlotte, Bayley, Becky, and Sasha. So let's not use that as a comparison here, because it'll likely never be what it used to be 4 years ago. We just have to move forward and appreciate what we have. So I'm not saying you're wrong, John, but I'm just saying that with Baszler being champion, I personally do not feel that it's as bad as some people are making it out to be, because at least the matches are very good. It's not like they're shit. It's not like Jinder Mahal being WWE champion bad. And the division is still doing fairly well outside of Baszler being champion. John's third question here. Am I the only one that's slightly uncomfortable with Lars Sullivan versus the Lucha House Party feud, given what Lars has said in the past? I'm sure you're not the only one. As someone replied to your tweet that I saw in my mentions yesterday, I think having him work with the Lucha House Party is for the better. Because I think if you only have him work with people that I feel like he's changed. I don't know the guy, but he said those things a long time ago. They were some pretty deplorable, disgusting stuff, as I've said here on the show before. He had to apologize. He should have been reprimanded, and he was, which is great. But having him work with, for example, only white guys because he has an issue with, black people or Latinos or whatever would be kind of an issue. Obviously, having him work with the Lucha House Party and kind of making up for what he said with Kalisto. No, I'm not saying that Kalisto should always shoot shots at Lars Sullivan to make him bleed. I'm not saying that at all. Give the guy stitches every single fucking time they wrestle. But I think it's for the better. The guy, I think, having him work through his problems with people that he had apparently had an issue with many years ago, I think can only be seen as a good thing. So I'm not blaming you. I don't think it's a bad thing for being uncomfortable with this feud. But I think it's probably the best thing for him. And then also from a booking standpoint, I think it's great to have the guy feud with like an undercard act before he moves on to bigger stars. Like, I'd rather see Lars versus the Lucha House Party for his first feud, for his first match on the main roster, than him versus Roman Reigns. Or even Finn Balor. I think you can build up to those matches, but first you have to have him face the lower level guys in the Lucha House Party. Matt Hardy, maybe they teased something with him and R-Truth several weeks ago before the 24/7 title came about, so maybe we see that match at some point. But yeah, I'm personally fine with it. And by the way, too, as I'm recording this, there's someone right outside my window that's doing work in their backyard, so if you hear like a fucking, like a drill or anything, that's definitely what it is, so I apologize for that. Anyway, the next question comes from @HardyDXFan. Ross from Twitter. His question was, everyone wants an AEW versus WWE rivalry, but would an NXT versus AEW feud be better for both brands, seeing as NXT can at least constantly put on a good show to compete with? Yeah, I agree. Like, this is all fantasy booking, but like, if we were to see an AEW versus WWE rivalry, I mean, it's really not about the shows for me. Like, I don't know what you're talking about. You're talking about like a dream card here, like of AEW versus WWE guys. In that case, I mean, I guess you could go either with the main roster or NXT. It's all personal preference. But if you're talking about quality-wise in terms of the shows, yeah, obviously AEW wins by a country mile. Money in the Bank, that was a very good show. The pay-per-views aren't really a problem. They're not standout, memorable, great shows, but they could be way worse. The Raws and SmackDowns are fucking atrocious. SmackDown's better than Raw, not by much though. If you add in a third hour to SmackDown, it would probably be almost as bad as Raw. Because I could not tell you anything memorable that happened on this week's SmackDown. It was a pretty forgettable show. And I know a lot of it was designed to hype up Super Showdown, but like, that's a show I don't care about, so why would I care about SmackDown? But anyway, if you're talking about like, what's the real feud here? AEW versus WWE or AEW versus NXT? It's obviously the latter. Obviously, people have been saying this since TakeOver that AEW's real competition is not WWE. Vince will never change. Raw will never change. I mean, I guess it could, but based off what we've seen the last 2 weeks since Double or Nothing, obviously they do not give two shits about AEW or Double or Nothing. We'll see maybe if they amp it up a bit when it comes time for AEW to arrive on TNT, debut on TNT in the fall. Maybe then they'll start putting forth more of an effort to make the shows better. Until then, nothing will change. AEW's real competition right now is NXT because it appeals to the same demographic. They want the same talent. Because if you're not going to NXT, you're probably going to AEW. If you're not going to AEW, you're probably going to NXT. Joey Ryan, prime example. Maybe not a great example, but like he's a guy that NXT wanted as a coach. I think as a coach, which is weird, at the Performance Center. And then AEW wanted him under contract to their company. So that's someone that both brands would want for different reasons. Now, Joey Ryan, he said no. He's staying on the indies. That's great for him, but as I said on Twitter a couple days ago, I feel like a big reason behind that is because he probably knows that the whole dick shtick would not work on NXT TV or AEW TV. So that's really what his claim to fame is. And the guy's a very good wrestler, but he's largely a comedy guy, and that's a big part of his comedy. I don't want to see that in AEW. I definitely do not want to see that in NXT. So that being said, what I'm trying to say here is that those people are who like NXT and AEW are looking for. They're both chasing similar talent. It's very rare that we see someone get scooped up by WWE and then go straight to the main roster. AJ Styles is the exception. I don't know why Mike Kanellis went straight to the main roster, but whatever. They would go to NXT first. So Triple H is really doing the recruiting process for WWE, not Vince. And AEW wants that same talent. So like Shane Strickland, for example, a lot of people thought he would go to AEW, but he ended up in NXT. A lot of people thought that we could see, I don't know, who else did AEW scoop up that I could see in NXT? I think Kylie Ray at one point was scouted for NXT UK. She turned down the offer and went to AEW instead. So again, another prime example of a person who could have gone to either promotion. I know Ring of Honor is an option. I know Impact is an option. There's also obviously New Japan, but let's be real here. Here in the States, the biggest two choices are either NXT or AEW if you're a big enough independent talent. Not so much the other companies. But yeah, an AEW versus NXT rivalry is really what it is, because I saw more people comparing Double or Nothing and TakeOver as opposed to Double or Nothing and Money in the Bank. It's really Double or Nothing and TakeOver are neck and neck with talent in terms of quality too. I thought TakeOver was better, and I was at both shows, but not by much. I thought both shows were excellent. At E13A, his question was, do you think Gargano Cole 3 will happen at the next TakeOver? Additionally, do you think it would be Gargano or Cole's last match in NXT? And what will happen for the rest of the Undisputed Era? Great question. I could see them doing the third match on TV. So our next TakeOver is not until SummerSlam weekend. That's not that far away. So they could hold out if they wanted to. It's not for another 2.5 months, but they're not on TV every week anyway. So if they want to hold out till that TakeOver in Toronto, they could. And I could see them doing that. The matches are strong enough that a third match has to happen, whether it's on TV or at TakeOver. Now, I think they will do it on TV, just so they can build to Matt Riddle and Adam Cole at TakeOver Toronto. Now, I don't know if Matt Riddle would win. I don't think he would, because we've seen 2 title changes now in the span of 2 months. I don't know if we would have a third straight TakeOver with another title change. I don't think so. But I guess we could, actually. We've had that before. Because we had Shinsuke Nakamura beat Joe for the NXT title at TakeOver Brooklyn 3 years ago. Then Joe won the belt back at TakeOver, what was it? Not Japan. That's where Shinsuke won it back at the house show. Joe won it in, I think, Toronto? I think it was Toronto, actually. He won it back in Toronto a few months after that. Shinsuke won the belt back at a house show, and then he dropped it to Bobby Roode in San Antonio in January. So I guess they could play hot potato with the belt if they wanted to. But I think it makes more sense to do Matt Riddle and Adam Cole at that TakeOver, seeing as how Matt Riddle's been feuding with Undisputed Era for a couple of months now, as has Gargano, but Matt Riddle just beat Roderick Strong at TakeOver on Saturday in an amazing match, just a fucking fantastic match. So I think Adam Cole would make sense. And Matt Riddle does own a victory over Adam Cole from before. I think it was after TakeOver New York. I think it was like a month and a half ago. He beat Adam Cole on NXT TV in a great match. So he owns a victory over the current champion. I guess they could always wait until the TakeOver after that to do that match. Until the TakeOver over Survivor Series weekend, but that I feel like is too far. They would have to do it at TakeOver Toronto. So, yeah, my guess is that they'll do Gargano Cole on TV between now and TakeOver Toronto. Then what happens to Gargano? Does he get put back in chase mode full time? Does he go after the North American title, which he's already lost to Dream? He already went after that. Does he do the tag team thing? Or does he get called up? That's the real question. I hope not. And I thought I would never say that, but I really hope that none of these guys get called up as long as Raw is this bad. Or even SmackDown too. There's a lot of people on both shows they are not doing jack shit with because of this dumb fucking wildcard rule. We see Roman Reigns on every single fucking show. We see Alexa Bliss multiple times a week. But I have yet to see Ryder and Hawkins on Raw in weeks. The Viking Raiders I have not seen on Raw in weeks. We never see Cedric Alexander. I said before, we have yet to see Buddy Murphy. He got called up to SmackDown. Haven't seen him since. EC3, another guy we have barely seen. So, I'm not a fan of it. The whole wild card shit, you guys know that. And I don't think anyone would benefit, whether it be a Gargano, Cole, even a fucking Pete Dunne, would benefit from getting called up anytime soon. Because they would be ruined and would never be on the show, as long as this wild card thing is a thing. And as long as creative is this bad. Because even before the wild card rule, they had people on Raw, they called up like EC3 and Nikki Cross and did nothing with them. So again, I do not want to see anyone called up anytime soon. If Gargano gets called up, he's fucked. He is so fucked. He was the guy and has been the guy in NXT for so long now, it's going to be tough to see him at anything less than a top spot on the main roster. The guy would not be going for a world title on either show. He might not even be going for a mid-card title. He might be like lower undercard at best because of his size and because they just have way too much talent. They're already not doing enough with it at the moment. So he would be lost in the shuffle within weeks, if not immediately. Adam Cole would have to be called up with the rest of Undisputed Era. I feel like they should stay down in NXT a little longer than Gargano. Gargano really has done everything there is to do. Cole, I mean, he can have the reign as champion. He has feuds waiting with, he never really faced Velveteen Dream. We could still see that at some point. He could still feud with Matt Riddle. Undisputed Era can go back after the tag titles. Roddy can go after the North American title. There's still more to do with that faction on that brand. But if Cole does get called up, if you were to drop the belt right back to Gargano or to Matt Riddle and take over Toronto, then Cole, he would have to be called up with the rest of Undisputed Era. They cannot be called up separately. It has to be a package deal. But even then, that's not a guarantee that they'll be used right on the main roster. Look no further than Sanity. An Undisputed Era cream Sanity by a country mile, I realize that. But still, they had a money-made faction, not a money-made faction, but like a ready-made stable right there with Sanity. On SmackDown, right when they got called up, did nothing with the guys. And Nikki Cross, who I guess wasn't called up with them, but you know what I'm saying. So they had a stable, did nothing with them. So why even bother? Why the fuck should we even bother? Who cares? Who gives a shit? So it could be Gargano's last match in NXT, and I could see him headed to the main roster soon after. Honestly, I would rather see him stick around in NXT. There's not much more for him to do, but like with Cedric and Buddy, who I said have outgrown 205 Live, at least they were on the fucking show. Because now they're not even on Raw and they're not even on SmackDown. So why even bother? Iwagu91 from Twitter, their question was, had he not done the stunt that killed him, would Owen Hart have become WWE Champion? I don't think so. So he passed away in 1999. He first got a shot at the belt in 94, 5 years earlier when he beat Bret Hart at Mania 10. Then obviously Bret Hart went on to win the championship a little later on in the show. They had that match at SummerSlam after Owen Hart became King of the Ring. Fantastic match. One of the best SummerSlam matches I've ever seen. The Steel Cage match at SummerSlam 94 for that title. And that was about it. I mean, I'm sure he got another title shot after that. I would assume. I'm not saying that because I know for a fact. I don't remember another title shot that he got for the WWE title after that in the remaining 5 years that he was alive. I guess he could have like a one-off opportunity on Raw. But that was it. After that, they only really saw Owen, it seemed, as either a tag team guy or a mid-card guy. Now, obviously, he had his run-ins with various top stars, including Stone Cold Steve Austin and Triple H, who went on to become a big star a little later on in the 90s, in the late 90s. But he was never like the top guy after that. I felt like that was it. And even then, I don't know if they saw him as a top guy. They only went back to Owen Hart as a WWE Championship challenger because he had previously beaten Bret Hart at WrestleMania, so it made sense. But if there was any time to put the belt on him, that would have been it. Now, granted, Kofi Kingston has been with the WWE now 11 years and only now got a WWE title run at WrestleMania. So, never say never. I guess he maybe could have at some point, maybe in the early 2000s, when they shifted their mindset a bit about what makes a star, like when Eddie Guerrero became a world champion and Chris Benoit became a world champion and Chris Jericho became a world champion. Who's to say that Owen Hart would not have become a WWE champion at some point during the remainder of his run with WWE? Who knows how long he would have been still wrestling had he not passed away in 99. So, no, I don't think he would have. I really do think that the time to put the belt on him would have been in 94, 95. But when that didn't happen, I think that ship sailed. But again, it's not impossible to say that he could have become WWE Champion at some other point in the early 2000s if he was still alive. Their second question, another Owen Hart question here. Since he allegedly never apologized to Stone Cold Steve Austin for breaking his neck, would Owen had done so if he was still alive today? Probably. I would assume so. I mean, I feel like everyone buries the hatchet at some point. So that incident happened in 97. He obviously should have apologized as soon as it happened. He didn't. Shawn Michaels never apologized for the Montreal Screwjob until like a decade later. Probably a little more than that. So again, had Bret Hart passed away in the mid-2000s, we would have never gotten that apology from Shawn Michaels and Bret. So I feel like at some point, if Owen Hart was still alive today, with the way the world works and just with the way, not in a bad way, but like everyone I feel like apologizes eventually for stuff like that. With podcasts being a thing and shoot interviews and just, I don't know, I feel like he should have apologized. and he probably would have done so by now if he was still around today. At Chris S. Krieger from Twitter, where does the AEW live experience rank on your markoutitis totem pole? Great question. I had a great time at Double or Nothing. It was not, by any means, the greatest show I've ever been to. I can probably name at least 5 other shows that I've been to that were better than that. Where did it rank on the markoutitis totem pole? I didn't really have many markout moments on that show. I just thought it was one of those shows that you just kind of sat back and enjoyed. It wasn't one of those shows where it was like, holy shit. The only 2 moments on that show where I got really, animated were, the Young Bucks Pentagon Jr. Phoenix match was awesome, but it wasn't, markout worthy, to the point where I was like, oh my god, I'm, freaking the fuck out. But it was a great match. Awesome Kong showing up got a big reaction out of me, because I was not expecting that. I think I didn't, go nuts for the Jon Moxley debut, just because I feel like a lot of us were expecting it. So it was a great moment, but it doesn't rank too high. I would say right in the middle. It was one of those shows where I just kind of sat back and enjoyed and wasn't up on my feet going crazy the whole time. I would say TakeOver 25 was much higher up on the totem pole in terms of markoutitis moments with what I marked out at. The Street Profits becoming the tag team champions, and then Adam Cole becoming the NXT champion. Those were some pretty big reactions when those happened. I went nuts. If you watch the videos here on the channel and me reacting to both moments when I was there, the camera footage is incomprehensible for 10 seconds. I don't know if that's the right word, but it goes black for 10 seconds because I was too busy losing my fucking mind when both moments happened. So I feel like that show is a lot higher up on the totem pole. But the AEW live experience was great, and I would absolutely go back. In fact, I'm definitely looking to go back. If they do another all-in, all-out show next Labor Day weekend in Chicago next year, I would definitely go back for that. At Scarlet1 from Twitter, have you heard about the recent controversy about Bully Ray ordering a backstage interaction with a fan for arguing with the women wrestlers at Ring of Honor? I did hear about that. It was all over Twitter on, I think, Tuesday morning, if I'm not mistaken. Ring of Honor has since issued a statement saying that, we're going to investigate the matter, blah, blah, blah. Bully Ray put out a statement saying that, admitting to the whole thing, saying, yeah, I did bring him backstage, but I wasn't being mean to him. I didn't bully him. He was making some rude comments. I've heard conflicting reports that the guy was really rude. He's been rude in the past. He was making sexual gestures and shit like that. That shit is probably not necessary. If he was simply yelling at the heels, being like, hey, you suck, bitch, or whatever, you're a heel, you kind of have to expect that. I know it's 2019 and they're women, but if he's like, oh, go get fucking laid or something, that's unnecessary. But if he's saying oh, you're a bitch, blah, blah, boo, you, whatever, they're heels, they have to expect it. That's the way that it is. The issue that I have with this isn't so much of what the guy said, because again, there's conflicting reports about how out of line the guy was. The issue here that Bully Ray, again, like I said, has since admitted to, is that he brought him backstage to begin with. That is inappropriate. If a guy is out of line with what he's saying at a show, you absolutely do not bring him backstage to talk to him as a wrestler. You either have security kick him out, escort him out of the arena, have him talk to an official, not fucking talk to the guy's boyfriend. That's inappropriate. To Velvet's guy's boyfriend. Not to the guy's boyfriend. That makes no sense. To the girl's boyfriend. I felt like that was extremely inappropriate. So, yeah, I again, he admitted to it, so it's not like that part didn't happen. Having Bully Ray having him order security to get this guy, bring him backstage, and regardless of how the interaction went down, the fact that the interaction happened at all is unnecessary and should not have happened. Officials should take care of that. Security should take care of that. Not Bully Ray, the wrestler. That's inappropriate. So hopefully that is rectified soon. Their next question. How did you feel about the good shit line from the Talk is Jericho episode of Jon Moxley becoming a meme? I'm assuming if you've seen the usage of it. Yeah, I've seen the usage of it all over my timeline, all over my mentions since Raw and SmackDown this week. Since the shows were not good, I saw a lot of people responding to me with that meme. That's good shit. I laughed. I thought the Pooper Scooper line was funnier because I love Jon Moxley's Vince McMahon impersonation, but he did it again for the good shit line, so That is absolutely 120% something. I think we've all imagined Vince saying at one point or another, but hearing it come from Jon Moxley of all people is even more amazing. So I thought it was hilarious as hell. I love the fact that it's become a meme. It's not as good as the "why? Fuck you, that's why" Vince McMahon meme that I use all the time, but it's getting pretty close. I love it. I thought it was funny, and it is kind of sad that it has actually happened before with Vince McMahon, that he would actually eat up his own garbage. That's good shit. No, it's not good shit, Vince. It's awful. It's atrocious. The fans realize it. The audience realizes it. The wrestlers realize it. Some of the writers realize it. The only person that doesn't is you. So I thought it was funny. It's just sad that it actually is a real thing, that Vince actually said that. That's pretty bad, but I thought it was funny, though, the impersonation and all. Their next question, best and worst of NXT TakeOver 25. Is there ever really a worst of takeovers? There's not. There's really not. There has never really been anything offensively bad on these shows, aside from maybe fucking Sylvester Lefort versus Enzo Amore 5 years ago, which I recently rewatched back with Alexis. God, that shit was awful. If that happened today, people would rake NXT over the coals for being so bad, because that shit was pretty bad. But anyway, best, obviously, Cole Gargano was match of the night. Amazing match. The tag team title match, fantastic match. Love the moment. The opener was awesome. Riddle and Strong, one of the best pure wrestling matches I've seen all year in WWE, or really any other company, actually. I even really enjoyed Velveteen Dream and Tyler Breeze. Wasn't the best match on the show, but it had great storytelling and stuff like that, and psychology. I thought that was a great match. I guess the worst, if you really want to call it the worst, would be Baszler and Shirai. That was probably the weakest match on the show. I guess you can go back and forth between that and then Breeze and Dream. I missed most of the women's match, actually. I went to go get food and a t-shirt and a soda. So I guess that would be the worst, just because I didn't really have much interest in the match. But from what I did see, and from what I've gone back and seen, it was a very good match. Definitely not a bad match by any means. Probably one of the better matches you would see on any other WWE show. I guess other than that, the only real worst thing, the only bad thing on that show, maybe Stephanie showing up in the crowd. I thought that was, I'm like, oh, fuck. Oh, Stephanie, woohoo, who cares? Just seeing Britt Baker shoot her a shot, this glare, was so funny from where she was sitting in the audience. I'm sure that wasn't intentional, but I thought that was just a great visual of Britt Baker, side-eyeing Stephanie McMahon. I thought that was funny. But beyond that, great show. Real no complaint, not many complaints from it whatsoever. And then the final question comes from Alex DeGiacomo, the one, the only, the amazing, who I met actually a year ago, 2 days ago, June 3rd, 2018, one of the best days ever, so shout out to her for that. Her question was, how do you feel about the Firefly Funhouse going on for this long? Go into detail, please, because I love talking about my boy, B. Wyatt. Also, I love you, and so does RJ, so include this in the podcast, please. K, I love you, bye. Yeah, RJ, I apologize. I said that's the takeover when I saw you on Saturday, but RJ in his question last week included how he said, love you so much, by copying what Alexis did in her question. I neglected to include it in the episode, so again, I apologize. Here's my formal apology to you, RJ, but I'll include that part of the question from Alexis here in today's episode. So there you go. Hopefully that makes up for it. So for her question, you kind of already asked this a week or two ago about the Firefly Funhouse. How long do I see it going on for? I thought it would have ended by now. It's been going on now for about 2 months. If you include the post-WrestleMania vignettes with Bray Wyatt, not with Bray Wyatt, but for Bray Wyatt, that started the night after WrestleMania. Don't get me wrong, they're the best part about Raw. The Firefly Funhouse is easily far and away the best thing on the show right now. Nothing else even comes close. And I'm scared because once they are done with the Firefly Funhouse, I feel like it could be all downhill from there. Because who knows how well this will translate to the ring, to promos in the ring, to just anything else but the Firefly Funhouse. I don't know if it'll translate as well. I don't know if Vince will book it properly. Who the fuck knows? I really do not know. So I'm honestly okay with them continuing with it for as long as possible until they have a plan in place for what they're going to do with the guy. Now, they should have a plan in place already, but hey, if we're still getting weekly segments like this, I'm not annoyed by it, because if it's entertaining, then I don't care. Same thing with like a Johnny Gargano in NXT. Is it annoying that he's not already on the main roster because he deserves it? Absolutely. But at the same time, though, it's like if they have no plan in place for him, and I feel like he's better off in NXT right now, then why rush it? Why have a move if there's no need for him to be moved? You know? Same thing with Bray Wyatt. Why move on from something so great if I guess you could argue it's overstayed its welcome, but at the same time, I feel like it's not going to translate as well when he comes back in full form on Raw. So run this thing into the ground, or at least come up with a plan for the guy, for him, for him to have something to do when this Firefly Funhouse thing wraps up, which will hopefully be sooner rather than later. But yeah, hopefully it's soon. I thought it would wrap up back in Money in the Bank a couple of weeks ago, and it's already June 5th as I record this. So maybe after Stomping Grounds he comes back. I don't know. I really don't. Hopefully he doesn't return at Saudi Arabia, at Super Showdown in Saudi Arabia. Stomping Grounds is 2 weeks after that. So, I mean, I don't know. I don't know if they would have him come back before that pay-per-view, only to give him a squash match on that show with, like, fucking Heath Slater. Who cares? But, yeah, I would keep this shit going because it's still entertaining, and I'm not sick of it personally yet. And I would prefer this over what they will likely have him doing when he inevitably returns on Raw. And that's going to do it, guys, for episode 288, I believe, of Hashtag AskGSM here today. Thank you guys, as always, for sending in your questions. I appreciate it. Be sure to send in your questions by tweeting me on the Twitter machine at WrestleRant with the hashtag AskGSM. Find me on Facebook at facebook.com/Graham.gsm.Matthews. Leave your question on the post I usually put up on Tuesday nights, if not on the wall itself. And last but certainly not least, drop your question down below in the comment section of this very video. I'll include your question in next week's edition. So, with all that being said, guys, I'm taking the weekend off from wrestling after being at Money in the Bank, and then Double or Nothing the very next weekend, to then being at Takeover the very next weekend after that. Thankfully, I do not have a ticket to Super Showdown. Thank God, because that show's going to be awful. I'm taking the weekend off from going to any wrestling shows, and we'll see about the weekend after that, because Northeast Wrestling is having a show on June 14th here in Connecticut with Dean Ambrose on the card. He's on the bill, and Joey Janela, which is pretty cool, so I might be going to that. But other than that, though, guys, again, like I said, have a great rest of your week. I'm Graham GSM Matthews, and I'll catch your ass down the road.